Well, hey everybody, this is Joe Van Cleve and welcome to my darkroom, and I have a short little video to present to you guys about a little darkroom tip that I figured out a little while ago, maybe a couple weeks, maybe 2 months ago I think. Anyway, so let me swing the camera on and show you the enlarger side of my darkroom and show you what the problem was and the solution I came up with. So I have two light sources that I use in my darkroom. I actually have another enlarger, Bestseller 23C, but my Bestseller 4x5 enlarger, and then I have a timer for the enlarger, and I also have this homemade light source for pre-flashing paper negatives. And I found myself periodically having to plug and unplug both lights into my timer. Like if I wanted to use the enlarger on a timer, I'd have to plug the enlarger into the timer, or if then I wanted to pre-flash some paper negatives, I'd have to switch cords, and it was just a real hassle. So here's what I did is I went to the hardware store and I got one of these gray outdoor grade electrical boxes, enclosures, and a plate. And I got a switch and then a dual outlet. And the way this thing wires up is I have a heavy-duty cord feeding this box from the output of the timer, okay? So this timer is controlled by the push button right here and whatever the time is set to. And then you have into the box, you have plugged in, this cord is for the pre-flash light source and this cord is for the enlarger. And so I can simply switch between either enlarger or pre-flash light source, and then when the timer turns on, it feeds power to the box to whatever side is switched on. And of course the timer's electricity plugs into the plug strips on the wall over there. So for instance, let's push this. We have it set to the pre-flash light source, 8 seconds. There we go. And watch the timer go. Da 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 da. There it goes. Da-da. So there it is, and it's a real simple, easy solution. Everything is plugged in permanently now. I don't have to keep swapping cords. And this little box sits right on the ledge of the 4x5 Bestseller enlarger. My timer light sits up on the back frame of the enlarger, right about eye level, and so it works really nice. By the way, I really like these timer lights for analog timers because it resets itself back to the same time that you started with. I noticed with other timers, when it gets to 0, it simply stays there and you have to reset it. But this one goes back to whatever one that you have it set to. So it's pretty cool. I really like it. So it would probably help you guys if I took the switch box out and take it out to the workbench and take it apart and show you the kind of outlets you have to buy and the kind of switch you have to buy if you want to make one of these yourself. So I'm going to have to cut some of these tie wraps, but that's just temporary, and I'll rewire it back up when I'm done. Okay, so as you can see, this is one of these outdoor grade gray electrical boxes. I don't need two inputs for wires, just one input for the cable. So let me go ahead and take the 3 screws off and take the plate off, and we will look inside of it here. Exolite screwdrivers. I've had this set of Exolite screwdrivers since the very early 1980s. I think 1981, when I got out of the Navy and I became a TV repairman. This was my first set of tools I bought, and I still have all of the bits and everything. Okay, here's the inside of the box. So I'm using a 2-prong cord. It was just a spare cord I have. You could also use a 3-prong cord. Probably would be better safety-wise. That way you have a ground wire to attach. Let me show you basically how this thing's wired up. So I'm using, in this cord that comes in, let's look at the white wire coming in on the cord. White wire is the neutral, and the neutral is going to loop around and connect to the neutral side of the outlets, which are the wide prongs on the 3-prong outlets. And you can see this brass jumper in place. The white wire attaches to this prong and it jumpers across to this one. So we have neutral on both outlets. However, the hot side of the outlet, you break this brass or metal linkage between both sides. You can see I've broken it out so that the hot side of the outlets are separated from each other. Okay, so the hot wire coming from my input cord is the black wire, right down there. And that hot wire connects to this terminal on the switch. And this is a single pole double throw switch. So the hot wire connects to here, and then the output of the switch is either going to be on this terminal or on this terminal right here. So there's two terminals, one here, and whichever side the hot wire connects to depends on which position this switch is thrown. Okay, so the hot, we're switching the hot between this terminal and that terminal, and those two outputs are going to go to the two sides of the switch. One goes to this side on the hot side of the outlet, and the other one goes to that side on the hot side of the outlet. Now, I have tinned the wiring, the tips of the wiring that I stripped off. I've tinned them with solder and then put them on the lugs, and tinning them, it makes a little bit better quality connection. Now, one other thing I did is that I wanted to have the switch physically wired so that when you flip it to the right, it will switch to the right socket. And so in order to do that, you have to use a ohm meter and figure out what side, what terminal of the switch is being connected to the hot when it's flipped that way, and you want to wire that to this side. And conversely, on the left side, you want to wire that one to this side so that it's the right logical order. So when you have your plate on, flip to this side is this, and flip to that side is that. I also want to mention that you might see down in the bottom of the box here, I'm using a adhesive cable tie mount stuck to the bottom of the box in a cable tie as a strain relief for my inputs so that it's not going to be pulled loose by any tension on the cable, which I generally don't have anyways. Now, when you go to the hardware store and look for one of these switches, you're going to see there will be some switches that will just have two terminals. It'll simply be open and closed. You want the kind of switch that has three terminals. It's going to switch between a common input, and it'll switch between two outputs. That's the kind you need. As far as the outlet itself goes, you just want to get the three-prong outlets, the kind that you can break off the tab on the hot side so you can separate the two outlets. Instead of them being in parallel, they're going to be separate circuits. Oh, and by the way, these mounting lugs that were intended to screw the box into a frame of a building or whatever, those are a convenient place to put your tie wraps for dressing up your wires properly. I know some of you might have questions about my pre-flashing light source and how that's made. I think I covered it in a previous video from a couple years ago, but just in case you haven't seen that video, I'm using these 7.5 watt light bulbs. It's called an S11 type bulb. It's a round little kind of a ping pong table tennis sized globe in a standard household base, 7.5 watts, and it's in a custom housing. This housing is a piece made from a piece of PVC pipe, so it's plastic insulated. It has a cord going through the one end. There's simply a light bulb socket in here, and I have it stopped down to approximately a 1/4 inch diameter hole in the bottom. And I suspend this light source about 30 inches or so above my work surface down here, and that's the standard height that I pre-flash at so that I get a consistent pre-flashing intensity. And this was a test I did years ago. This is Arista Grade 2 RC paper, and this was made with the same setup. It's at 30 inches, and it's simply 5-second increments. And so 5 seconds on this test didn't show any change in density. 10 seconds did, and so I typically use about 8 seconds on the timer for pre-flashing resin-coated paper negatives. For Harman direct positive paper, I use about 3.5 seconds for Harman. Well, that's it. Short and sweet. If you have multiple light sources that you're trying to operate off the same timer, get yourself one of these little boxes and rig up 2 plugs and a switch. to switch your timer between two different lights. Well, until next time, this is Joe Van Cleve, and have yourselves a great day.